Hey guys, and welcome to one of the coolest, I think, updates over here when it comes down to the PlayStation 5. Now, in case you guys are kind of curious, throughout the years, we've actually been seeing a lot of these really big, high-end, basically, consoles, Xbox, Nintendo, and the, PlayStation 5, kind of go through a little bit of a big change, where obviously people don't want to have things like emulators be running on the console itself, anti-cheating, a lot of also internal updates are kind of, important. And this is actually one of the coolest things we've had a chance to go and kind of subtly watch in the background, and right now, there's a brand new, kind of somewhat exploit slash emulator slash everything else in between that is now available for the PlayStation 5, and it's kind of overall changing the console, changing the future of the console, and as well, a lot of really cool and nifty tech is all being involved, so I just want to go and share it with all of you lovely folks. So if you guys want to go hear about this one, make sure you guys are subscribed with the notifications on. Leave a like if you guys like this type of news and your thoughts and comments down below. We have the Twitter and Twitch room down below, Target and Amazon links too, and let's dive into the video. So, in case you guys can't, read between the lines when it comes to that one, emulators have been kind of a nifty thing we've been watching pretty closely when it comes to PlayStation 5. We had a lot of big issues with it. The PS3 was actually on a slightly different architecture, so a lot of things such as, emulators and running them through, cloud hosting has always been a little bit of a kind of bigger problem. But now, we're seeing even brand new stuff that does seem like it's actually finally working, where emulators now are able to be ran on the PlayStation 5, thanks to the mass core exploit with the download links, and it works as well on firmware 6.5. So, like I said, for some reason you guys don't necessarily know what a firmware slash emulator type thing is, firmware is just the actual update itself for what console version your console's on, and an emulator is essentially being able to go and just re-emulate every other game onto a different either operating system or console. So a good example, some folks actually will go and emulate things like a Wii U, N64 games, or whatever it might be from ROMs, and you can play that basically on your PC. Same thing too as well with some of these other updates, such as having the PlayStation 5 being able to go run specific games in the PSP, PS1, PS2, etc., and it's almost kind of what they're using as their cloud streaming type software, which is essentially kind of like its own internal emulator at the end of the day. But as of right now, it does seem like there's a huge update with the PlayStation 5, and let's go and talk about this one. So as you guys can see, the fans of Christopher Nolan's movies will appreciate this one. Following Macaulay Hudson's write-up and release of tools from the mass core exploit, people have now started to showcase emulators and other homebrew games running on the latest PlayStation 5 firmware, which is the 6.50 firmware update. Now, I do want to go and say this too, and same with the article. This still needs a lot of work. This is a brand new console, and it takes a very long time to go and do a deep dive into, where even some older consoles that have been out on prior generations are still not able to be fully 100% emulated. But either way, this is pretty much the biggest jump we've seen so far, and it's really cool because, if it keeps on continuing, it keeps on evolving, this actually might be a really big game changer. So now before you jump the gun, those are running with constraints of just the PS2 emulator. So it's basically running itself in the PS4 stack, and then it's also in the PS5 system. So it's a bit of a convoluted system, which is why it's kind of hard to even go make it, but you guys can kind of see it's basically like an emulator inside of another system inside of another hosted system, if that makes sense. So still very cool, and possibly the first public release with actual fun usefulness for end users on the PS5. We actually did have a few other various releases before, where you were essentially able to mock run things. Like a good example would maybe be for the level, I guess, of what it is, where you could basically turn on your computer and you could see the startup screen, but you couldn't necessarily go and run anything on it. That was the prior equivalent. Now this is kind of you can turn on your PC and you can launch a few programs, and it's actually kind of slowly getting put together. It's actually, like I said, probably gonna be one of the biggest PlayStation 5 updates, because whenever we can start having more emulation properly on the console, it's gonna be kind of a game changer, especially when it comes to, maybe folks who don't want to buy a PlayStation 5, not that I condone that, or as well, maybe if you ever want to care about game preservation, or just also want to rock out some older streamable games, as you guys can see with some Aladdin up in front of us. So as they're saying with this, it's still very cool, and this is possibly the very first public release with actual fun usefulness for end users, so it's actually usable. But for all intents and purposes, understand that this is currently limited to running the PS2 homebrew that includes emulators designed for the PS2, as demonstrated below. So because this whole technology, and it's also multiple different systems, think of PS1, 2, 3, 4, PSP, it is a lot harder to fully go and fine tune it, but it does seem like it's finally working. These masterminds actually somehow got it. So a Genesis emulator running inside a PS2 emulator running inside a PS4 stack of your PS5 wow, insert obvious over here, we need to go deeper. So you guys can tell why it's being so hard, because it is like a multi-layer system. So what is MaskCore for the PS5 and PS4? MaskCore is an unpatched exploit for PS4 and PS5, which leverages a vulnerability that they found in the PS2 emulation layer of Sony's newer consoles. The vulnerability was disclosed and described with great detail by the PlayStation hacker Ctort in September last year, but no full user-friendly implementation was released until as of now. Back then, Ctort stated Sony had no plan to fix this vulnerability. It has now been fully confirmed that the vulnerability is still here in the latest PS5 6.5 firmware update and the PS4 10.1001, as well as of February 2023. And then I might also go and maybe change it in the future. We're not 1000% sure, but as of right now, it's probably one of those things where it's like, who cares? Just go for it. So recently released beta firmware for PS5 7.0 and PS4 1050 still need to be confirmed, but there's good reason to believe they are also still vulnerable as of right this second, just based on their statements and other prior news. So as of right now, it does seem like emulators are now finally being released for the PlayStation 5. So scene hacker Marcus, in particular, has shared a PS4, PS5 compatible version of an emulator, PNG, Sega Genesis Mega Drive emulator that will run on all PS5 models up to firmware 6.5 included, and also, like we mentioned, the 7.0 likely as well, and most likely on the PS4 as well, up to the latest firmware update. We're still waiting for the update for it, though. And this, you will of course need a legit copy of the exploitable game Okage Shadow King, the most random game ever, which is still available for purchase as of this second, and a way to sign your game save file, either a jailbroken PS4 or a Save Wizard subscription, or a friend with one of those who can sign the save data for you, details below. So it is also a bit of a convoluted process, but if you guys care about emulation, I know some folks do, or care about it with like Nintendo, etc., as time goes on, it'll get a lot easier, get more mainstream, people get more files, and obviously depends. If you own the ROM, I do believe it is legal if you like actually own the game itself or have bought digital versions or whatever it may be, because you do technically own then the license at that point, so you should be fine. It is technically, I think, illegal to go do it though if you do not own that as well. So as the scene veteran Warzozin has also shared a screenshot of Super Mario 64, funny enough, running on the PS4 through this hack. This is a native PS2 port of Super Mario 64, and it's now also, funny enough, not even an N64 emulator. So it's once again confirming that old school console stuff can now actually be played. So they go and say, wait, I thought all you could do with the exploit was run PS2 games. Did someone pour a native version of Super Mario 64 into the PS2? Is it an emulator inside of an emulator? And they say, yes, it's a native build of SM64. Unfortunately, you don't get very far in the game before it crashes every time, though. So, like, it's still in those early stages. It's still being worked on, but the fact that it actually exists is why it's so mind-breaking. So they're even saying they're convinced that they'll see more PS2 stuff showing up in this exploit in the days to come, too. And, well, if you guys want to, like, be, I guess, along with the ride, make sure you guys are subscribed. If we see some cool stuff, we'll let you guys go know, too, as well. Although they may have to have a few different types of updates, too, on top of that. So saying, should I go and buy, like, Shadow King? Should I upgrade my PS4? If you're on a lower PS4, PS5 firmware, which is probably unlikely from you guys watching, unless the PS2 homegrown emulators running on a PS2 are really exciting for you, I would advise against updating your console for that. But if you do happen to be on the latest firmware too and have access to PSN, they are recommending you go and buy the Shadow King buy now. The game costs $10, which I feel like is an okay price if all you'd got to do is pay for a few minutes with an old Genesis emulator. So bigger things might not come for this one, but if you just want to be on the YOLO side, you guys could if you guys want. I feel like some folks are more so just kind of intrigued on the news rather than trying to emulate so far. But you guys can let me know if you guys ever have a big interest in the emulation scene itself. So as for this one, it's a growing possibility that Sony will remove the game from the PSN if they fear that more threatening stuff could come out of this. And there, I'm sure the Sony engineers who are actually enjoying the creativity of hackers to run on this unsigned code, I'm sure they probably don't care too much as long as it's not being too bad. So basically, yeah, they have all this random stuff over here if you guys want to even download it. If you guys check to the wololol.net, you have the PNG PS5 version over here. You can add the ROMs to using CD-Gen. You can create and run an Okage exploit, follow the tutorial too as well, and then use your save data too on top of that, so the PS2 is the loader. And then once the exploit runs on your PS5, send the emulator ISO to the PS5 too as well. So just be careful because it does not include ROMs, so you have to add them yourself using something like a CD-Gen. And on top of that too, the PS2 functionality is not perfect, so there might be a lot of bugs or crashes or glitches, and we'll probably see a lot more information these upcoming weeks, as the article even went and told you guys about. And as well, you also have to somehow sign over this save data in order to run to your PS5 account, and that's basically just a very, very intriguing thing. So it does seem like this is probably one of the bigger emulation changes, And this is, in my honest opinion, kind of a big groundbreaking change, because this is now allowing almost a bigger open window of people able to go and hack and mod the PlayStation 5 and add a lot more games and basically make things like the PS1, PS2, and PS3, and maybe even some other various games, if they can kind of go and fine tune it, available to be played and used. So very intriguing, very cool. As well, make sure you guys are subscribed with the notifications on. We have the Twitter and Twitch stream down below. We have the Target Amazon links too, and leave a like and your thoughts and comments down below. We'll have a lot more videos all throughout today.